Hi, welcome back to another episode of CivicList. I'm Matthew Camp, and I'm joined by Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams.
Hey, Matthew, good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it. So Eric, how are you feeling right now?
Oh, good. Challenging times, and we are all, experiencing the loss from Hollywood icons to our friends that live next door to us. The extent of what COVID-19 has impacted our families and our community is devastating. But we're resilient, and I think every generation had a challenge, and we were able to overcome, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, yeah. So you're feeling hopeful despite all these challenges, and we're getting in a new year now, and I wondered, as a long-term elected official, how you get a sense of what other people are feeling and what's on their minds.
It's so true, and I think more than just being an elected official for the last almost 30 plus years, my life has been on the ground. I was there as a police officer when 9/11 took place, and I saw the fear and uncertainty that was really on the face of many New Yorkers, and also now experiencing COVID-19, watching the face of people. And when it hit the city, I moved into Brooklyn Borough Hall, put a mattress on the floor,
Hmm.
and stayed there for about 5, 6 months so I could respond to the needs of people and go into NYCHA house, into hospitals. Many of our transit employees, supermarket employees, those essential workers, as we called them. And what's interesting, there was a report that came out today that showed out of the New York City employee pool, Black and brown workers had the largest amount of deaths. And it just showed how they were on the front line, making sure that the vital services in the city. And I see the faces of those people who have lost their loved ones and the fear and uncertainty.
Mm. So you're going around to NYCHA, you're talking to frontline workers and seeing their faces to really get a sense of what they're feeling.
And in conversations, there's something that is, I believe, was hidden from view. I would like to say all of those trailers, the temporary morgues that were outside of our hospitals. I was speaking with a group of funeral home directors, and they were talking about walking in the middle of the night or the day and seeing body parts fall out of the temporary body bags, and seeing bodies thrown on top of each other, and rushing people through the funeral, not having enough space. And so there are stories that many of the essential workers and people who really had to dig in deep are going to have traumatic experiences that's going to follow them a long time. And that's why we have to really focus on the mental health aspect of this entire coronavirus process.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And in terms of dealing with mental health and uplifting the city's mental health, it's interesting. You talked about being on the ground and literally having a mattress, in Borough Hall. And I know you're a person who meditates, and I think that the story of Buddha's enlightenment is when he touched the ground, right?
Mhm.
And that was really, instead of being this kind of abstract world, it was that contact. So, what grounds you?
Just that. And really, it's amazing, Matthew, that sometimes when we think about recovery, when we think about how do we get through moments, there's some simple things we can do every day, like starting our day with gratitude. And when before you go into the restroom to wash your face, just take a moment to sit on the edge of your bed or wherever you are and do an assessment of gratitude. And really, it sets your attitude for the entire day. And that's what I do in the morning and at the during the evening. I do the same thing. I reflect on my day and I give thanks of, the ability to help others. I spend that moment in the morning to meditate, to, do just some basic exercises and stretching, and just really start to allow my body to understand I'm blessed to get up every day and contribute to the greatness of this, of humankind.
Wow, that's really wonderful. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So, who in the community that you've gotten to know maybe recently, who are you grateful for?
So many people, particularly of the members of the Chinese community. Uh, what they did during COVID-19, I believe, was just amazing. While we had a president who was attempting to demonize them and call COVID-19 the Chinese virus, there were some mean people here in the city and country who attacked and actually harassed them. In some cases, we saw physical assaults. But when I reached out to many of my Chinese constituents and told them we were in need of PPEs, personal protection equipment, for NYCHA developments and for first line, frontline workers, they responded. We were able to secure over 200,000 pieces of PPEs that we delivered to NYCHA developments, to transit employees, to supermarkets, to hospitals. And it was about showing the resiliency of New Yorkers and those who come to America and embrace and love America. And they inspired me. And we did a ceremony at Brooklyn Borough Hall where we honored COVID heroes, we call them. And the number of people who sent in stories of everyday New Yorkers who just really went beyond the call of duty to help this city get past COVID-19.
Wow. Wow, that's really amazing to really give back, folks who are facing discrimination, kind of transcend that and give back. And I'd love to maybe have a link to some of those COVID heroes and the stories.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd love to share that. So I interviewed recently Rasan Harris, who's CEO of Citizens Committee for New York, a great organization, does very local work. And he talked about leadership, the need for leaders to really be visionaries. And so, we're going through a tough time right now. You're hoping to be mayor. So I'm thinking, let's say that works out and we're 8 years, 10 years from now, it's 2030. I'm wondering what should be happening in 2030? You've done 2 terms already at this point.
That's a great question. The real challenge we are having in our city and cities across America is not COVID-19. If you think about it for a moment, Matthew, the skills gap that was used or needed from the Stone Age to the Industrial Age was a small window. And from the Industrial Age to the Computer Age, it was another small amount of skill jump. But from the Computer Age to artificial intelligence and computer learning, the skill gap is so enormous. And Oxford University did a report that in the next 20 years, 40% of the jobs we're training our young people for today won't be available, won't be around. And it's more than just self-driving cars. We're talking about looking at the stock market, the trading room floor. We have 5,000 jobs there at its peak. We're down to 500. Even insurance brokers are now using computer learning and artificial intelligence. And so what I want to be noticed for, and my legacy, is how I prepared our city for a city that is existing in computer age or computer intelligence, artificial intelligence. And we move from a city that I like to say is dysfunctional because many of our crises are self-inflicted, move to a city where we will have a more functional, well-coordinated city that we can use this city as a place that could be a model across the entire country.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. If you're at 2030 looking back, you'll have prepared the city for this computing economy. How specifically will you prepare the city for that?
When I went into the police department as a rookie officer, I went in as a computer programmer, police officer, special assignment. I had skills in mainframe programming in COBOL, Fortran, and assembly. This is all hieroglyphics right now to anyone of today. But I was able to use those skills matched with my law enforcement skills to create with a small team the first time using computer data to go from being reactionary to crime to proactive and eventually to predictive. I saw it that all of our agencies in the city should have moved to a real-time model of running government. And so it's time now to take our cities from this 1960s, 1970s way of running government to a real time and coordinate our cities. And I think one of the three most important things as mayor I want to do is to, number one, have all of our agencies clearly define their mission, make sure that mission feeds into the overall mission of the city, and finally, to make sure we do an analysis of our agencies that we are not doing any actions that is in conflict with the mission of another agency. For example, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. They spend millions of dollars to fight childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, and childhood asthma, yet the Department of Education is in conflict with them because they feed our children 960,000 meals a day, and those meals cause what? Childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood asthma. That's a disalignment of how we should operate as a city. And there are too many other examples of how we are not utilizing our resources and moving our city forward. And though the inefficiencies is what create the inequalities, and it gives way to the injustices that we are witnessing.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that example of the city Department of Ed, buying almost 1 million meals every day. It seems like there's huge purchasing power. So is there a way that could be leveraged to change, the national food system instead of, basically subsidized junk food getting funneled to every American city? Is that an opportunity to flip it around?
Yes, it's a great opportunity to do so. Think about it for a moment. The city agencies purchase a substantial number of meals every day. Department of Correction, Department of Education, Health and Hospital. And the meals we are purchasing for the most part are unhealthy. And so what is it doing? It feeds our healthcare crises. 17% of 12-year-olds in this country have early signs of heart disease, our #1 killer. And so we also are experiencing food deserts. So why don't we use the buying power of the food that we purchase every day to invest in hydroponics, vertical farming, urban agriculture, so we can start changing the dynamic of #1, identifying food apartheid, food deserts, start serving healthy foods in these communities instead of junk food, start serving healthy food in our hospitals because the research is clearly showing that lifestyle medicine with a plant-based program it has great results. And really start looking at all the places that we are feeding people as government to make sure that we're giving them a healthy start. So we should not be feeding the crises that in the long run, we have to pay for the terrible health care that we are experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely don't want to perpetuate something, and that way you put it is so concise. You're literally feeding a crisis. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
I like to say, Matthew, one of my favorite quotes that I say all the time, we spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place.
Mm.
We need to start moving our government to an upstream model. We should not wait until a person or individual fails in education, a person fails in health, fails in homelessness, fails with criminal justice. We need to go upstream and prevent these actions from taking place, because it's cheaper to do prevention and it's more expensive to do a reactionary form of government.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. Being proactive saves lives, and time and money. So, are there other municipalities or leaders that you've seen who are doing that kind of work?
You know, that are being more proactive. Yes, there's one example that we look towards is in Boston. Boston has something called the city score. Uh, Anytime the city score drops below a 1, it immediately identifies what area that drop came from. So let's say there's a community where the school grades drop, or crime numbers increase, or the streets are dirtier based on their 9311 system. It would drop the score. They would be able to identify where the score was dropped and immediately allocate a response to maintain a certain level of standard for Boston, the city, so that they will know, instead of in the dark trying to wonder how they're doing as a city, they're seeing real indicators that let them know how they're doing. We can't continue to do just a scatter and pray and hope. We have to move and run our government in a more scientific, data-driven government, so we can properly identify the problems and execute a real solution to address it.
Definitely, yeah. Using data to its fullest ability and getting feedback on different aspects of the city to give this one big city score sounds like a good approach. Eric, you've got such an interesting background and everything from law enforcement to government, and you're a person who practices spirituality and meditative grounding, and also appreciates and wants to leverage data. And you work 7 days a week. So I'm just wondering what's driving you.
That's so funny. I'm sitting here laughing because people often say that you can't put Eric in a box. How do you classify him? What is he? And I think that it is so unfortunate that we don't develop our full personhood because we attempt to fit into classifications for others. And, my mother told me when I was a child, and I had an unfortunate circumstance with police officers who beat my brother and I, she shared with me that, son, you're going to find yourself in dark places, and you will make the decision if that dark place is a burial or a planting. And I believe that every moment that I've experienced gave me an opportunity to see it as a planting. And I came out of it as a better individual. I came out of it using the fruits of that harvest to help people who are also finding themselves in dark places. And so my motivation comes from, I believe personally, that we all deposit into the social bank of life, so that when we need to withdraw from that bank, we could do so. That's why I have this program that I do every day. It's the 100 Points program. Before I go to sleep at night, I want to make sure I received or I met my 100 points. I'll get 3 points for holding the door for someone. I'll get a point for saying good morning to someone I don't know. 5 points for buying someone a meal. At the end of the night, I'll add up all those points. And if I have a deficit in points, I would donate whatever the deficit is. I put it in a jar and donate it to someone or something at the end of the week. So this allows me to build into my everyday experiences a way of giving back. You can't accidentally give back. It must be part of your makeup and part of your existence. And that shows how grateful you are to be able to give back.
Wow, that's really powerful. That's this intentional practice of giving back and holding yourself accountable, right? To have the 100 points. Is that 100 points program something you created or something you've read about elsewhere? Or?
It was something I created because I would look from time to time when I did my taxes and look to see how much I donated outside of my religious beliefs or just helping people out. I said, I want to build into my everyday existence of giving back in a real way because we're so blessed. Think about it. I think sometimes we just came through the holiday season. We get it mixed up. It's not thanks receiving, it's thanksgiving. And we need to think about how often are we giving? We're so blessed to be not wondering where our next meal is coming from. We're not living in a homeless shelter. There's so much we have, and there's so many people who are in need. So too much is given, much is expected, and I want to live that out every day of my life.
Mm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, that this idea of how it's about giving back, and then ultimately, that also helps us get fulfilled as individuals. So I was wondering, this newsletter is all about building community. That a lot of people feel disconnected, isolated, even before COVID. So I think you may have addressed some of these, some interesting tactics and ideas about building community. But I wondered, how would you describe your method of building community?
By meeting people where they are.
Hmm.
And here we are in one of the most diverse cities on the globe. And if we are honest with ourselves, we don't know each other. We have someone that lives in the apartment next door or in the house down the block. And because they are of a different religious, cultural belief, we probably don't even know their name. And so what we're doing here in Brooklyn and throughout the city, we're doing something called breaking bread, building bonds. 100 dinners, 10 people at each dinner, and all the participants are from a different religious ethnic group.
Wow.
And they go around the table and they share information about who they are. If you're from the Hasidic community, why do you wear a black hat? If you are from the African diaspora, why do you wear a kufi? Different foods, different cultures, the Sikh community, and why they go to a temple. And so our goal is to have people do something that we rarely do, and that is communicate with each other, talk to each other, break down all those walls and all of those misconceptions that we have. We have the amazing power of communication, and it's now time to start using it. And our goal is just to turn the 1,000 people who are going to participate in the dinners, each one of them to host their own breaking bread, building bonds, and become ambassadors of how do we live with each other in a peaceful way.
Oh my gosh. I love that idea. That's really amazing. So breaking bread, building bonds. So this will be a citywide program when you're mayor?
Yes, it is. Because we need to do more in how we use our intentional manners or intentional ways of bringing us together. And so anyone who wants to do a breaking bread, building bonds, we're now doing it via Zoom. They can go to our website and they can sign up, and our team will communicate with them and coordinate them through the process. But we also believe we need to use our educational systems. We need to do more where we have what we call a captive audience with our students. It should be about developing their full personhood, not just turning them into robots of learning how to read, write, and do arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
We need to ensure that our young people are prepared to be critical thinkers, communicators, interacting, feeling comfortable around other groups. The skills that our children are going to need for tomorrow are totally different from the skills they are needed today. And our children are going to change their careers several times over a lifetime. They must be trained to deal with changes, how to have self-care. That is why in Brooklyn, we sent a group of educators away to learn meditation, mindfulness, and yoga, so we can teach other teachers how to do it and help our children with these skills of self-care. We have to prepare our young people and our families for the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely teachers, I'm sure would appreciate that, those opportunities to do self-care and to be mindful. And this idea of the breaking bread, building bonds too, gets back. I know we're kind of going to wrap up soon, but it kind of comes full circle because I always felt like food is the missing piece in community, and whether it's organizing or activism, people are very busy and we focus on legislation and elections, which is important. But when I talked to our friend Elaine Perlman about somebody who she thinks I should interview for CivicList, and somebody who's in in the food world, so to speak, you were the first person to come up. And I just thought that was so great because, I think we don't always think of our elected officials as people who are place, food as a central part of life. But now it all makes sense, in terms of your healthy, eating and as a way of building bonds. It's really beautiful. So that sounds amazing. I'll definitely like to sign up for that.
And it's also part of those dark moments and turning them into plantings. When
Right.
I was, as I stated, as a child, when I was beaten by a police officer, uh, instead of saying "woe is me," I said "why not me," and I joined the police department and was able to retire as a captain. And the same with food, and that's what Elaine knows me from, experiencing type 2 diabetes that caused me to lose, sight in my left eye and permanent nerve damage, the doctors stated at the time, and just told that I was going to eventually lose some finger and toes. And it was only because of food, going to lifestyle medicine and a whole food plant-based diet. Within 3 weeks, my vision returned,
Wow.
my nerve damage went away, my diabetes went in remission. And it was a moment of using that experience to help other people. And I wrote a book, Healthy at Last, that is really showing people how to reverse chronic diseases by the power of food. Food is so important. It's more than what we put in our mouths. It is something that allows us to nourish our bodies, our minds. It allows us to really change the conditions in our communities. And it's my goal to really show New Yorkers how do we empower ourselves with the food we eat, how we interact with each other, how we become more efficient as a city, because we can't continue to have these efficiencies create the inabilities and the inequalities that we are witnessing. And that is my goal. We're better than what we are as a city. And I believe we have some of the greatest people that we could possibly have that love this city. And we're going to cycle through what we're going through together.
Amazing. Wow, thank you so much for saying that. And a goal of this newsletter is to uplift voices, and you certainly have a lot of really powerful ideas and experience to do that, and everything you've gone through. Sounds like you could connect to New Yorkers in a lot of different levels. So I just want to be mindful of time, but thank you so much, Eric Adams, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, and Happy New Year's to you.
Happy,
Take care.
and thank you. Happy New Year.